Welcome back. You're watching our special edition of the 3 years of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Joining me is Sir Martin Sorrell from London to talk about where do things stand. As things stand right now, sir, we are nowhere closer to this war ending than what we were 3 years back. All one can now hear is a lot of moral outrage by European leaders who've descended in Kiev. But outrage they can all have, but they don't seem to have solutions.
Well, to be fair, the difference is that we now have some form of contact between the US and Russia, which we've not had under the Biden administration. I mean, for good or bad, that's what we have now. And I think communication, or some form of communication, may not be satisfactory from President Zelensky's point of view, or the Ukrainian point of view, or indeed from the European point of view, but at least we have some contact and some involvement from the US and Russia. And I think that is the change that's taken place. Whether this will lead to a settlement, as you're suggesting, is another question, because there are a number of extreme positions on both sides, and it sounds as though the initial positions will make it extremely difficult to get there, whether it's membership of NATO, return of territory that's been taken by the Russians either in 2014 with Crimea, or indeed the Donbass. We'll have to see. But I would sort of disagree a little bit with you that at least we have communication. We need that. We've seen that in the case of US and China, that when we have communication, there's more chance of us being together. You referred to the fact that I'm from the advertising industry, and communication works. And if you don't have it, it doesn't work.
You think that in hindsight, maybe these communication lines should have been established earlier?
Yes, I definitely do. I draw the parallel with US and China. When we didn't have the communication, it was extremely dangerous. I mean, mistakes can be made on either side, and there can be miscommunication or misunderstandings if there's no communication. So I think it is much better that we have communication. Obviously, President Trump has been very tough on Zelensky and has said some very tough things about him and his position. And we'll have to see how this shakes out. I think on the other side, as a number of people here in the UK, the ex-intelligence community have pointed out, that the Russian economy is not in good shape. The Russians have lost, I've seen estimates, huge estimates. I think you've included those figures in the program. Last week in Miami, I think President Trump suggested that 900,000 Russians and 600,000 Ukrainians had either been killed or injured in the 3-year conflict so far. I don't know whether those numbers are accurate or not, but whatever the number is, it's
a huge toll. It's a huge human toll on a war.
Human toll. And to be fair to President Trump, that is what he is very focused on, or appears to be very focused on in his statements, that he wants to end the conflict because he wants to end the senseless killing and maiming and injuring.
What do you think of his approach? What do you think of his approach where, he's, to a large extent, he's blindsided European leaders? They didn't even know when he picked up the phone and spoke to President Putin on 10th of February. Now they're taking turns to come and meet him. Your Prime Minister is set to be in Washington on Thursday. What do you think about that?
Our Prime Minister is behind the French President and the Polish Prime Minister. They're all lining up to see President Trump in Washington, which I think he is somewhat flattered by, to say the least. Now, look, the situation is extremely difficult. It will be extremely difficult to resolve. But at least, I would have to say, under the Biden regime, we had inaction. We had inaction in the Middle East. We had inaction as far as Russia and Ukraine is concerned. And to some extent, we had inaction in relation to US and China. That's the third theater, if I can put it that way, that we've yet to see what will happen. That's the third big geopolitical issue that we have to deal with. I mean, there are others like North Korea, but those three things, the Middle East, Russia, Ukraine, the US, China, are the big three issues that President Trump, I'm sure, is focused on. But look, I will have to see how it shakes out. At Munich, we had some communication also with Europe. To be fair to President Trump, also, he's made it quite clear in Trump 1.0 as he is in Trump 2.0 that Europe has to fend for itself, or fend more for itself than it has done historically. Spending 2 or 3% of GDP on defense is not sufficient, and we can't rely in Europe, as we have done since World War II, on the US for our own defense. We are going to have to devote greater resources to defense, both from a UK point of view and a European point of view. 2 or 3% of GDP may not even be sufficient. We may have to drive it up even further, and we have to look to our own resources in order to deal with the defense issues and the military issues in Europe. So that is a big change. It is now a situation where strong world leaders and nation states negotiate sort of unilaterally rather than multilaterally, and that's something we're going to have to get into.
Indeed, Sir Sorrell, thank you so much for speaking to me on NDTV.